What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Mavs Film Room podcast, and I'm going to start that intro one more time. But welcome, everyone, to the Mavs Film Room podcast, coming to you live on Wednesday, February 4th. It's less than 24 hours before the NBA trade deadline. The Mavericks shocked the world today with a trade out of left field, really, where they traded Anthony Dvais. Yes, Anthony Dvais, Jaden Hardy, D'Angelo Russell, and Dante Exum to the Washington Wizards for Khris Middleton, Malakai Branham, A.J. Johnson, 2 first-round picks, and 3 second-round picks. This one really came out of nowhere, I think around lunchtime. The Raptors and the Hawks were really the rumored teams that were interested in Anthony Dvais, and leading up to the trade deadline, it really felt like there was no momentum on an AD trade. I think we were all sort of resigned to the fact that he was going to finish the season on the Mavericks roster and potentially start next season. All of a sudden, this trade comes out of nowhere without warning. I have a lot of takes on this. The main takeaway, I think, is that it gives the Mavericks a lot more financial flexibility, and we'll get into the details of that later. I want to emphasize that the players that the Mavericks got back are non-factors. None of these guys may be on the team to start next season. Like, we were talking about it before. Marvin Bagley. Oh, I forgot to mention him. Marvin Bagley is the other player that they acquired in this trade, and he is probably the best player that's coming back to Dallas in this deal, and we'll see if he sticks around or if they flip him before tomorrow's deadline. But, guys, just off the bat, what was your reaction seeing that deal?
I mean, personally, I was just more than anything, I was shocked. And it didn't even occur to me to like judge whether or not this is a good deal. I was just surprised that AD got traded. And, Riccardi and Finley, I feel like just their MO from what they've been doing since taking over for Nico, I feel like they've been cautious. They don't want to rock the boat and all that. So I was really quite surprised to see a trade come to fruition and such a, huge one. And then, of course, personally, after the shock wore off a little bit, I looked into the trade and I saw the details and I was like, you know what? I think this is a lot better than what I was hoping for. So at least as of this moment, I'm happy.
I think I'm happy too, Vinay. How are you feeling after this blockbuster deal?
Honestly, it was the second Mavs trade in 370 days that I thought Shams was hacked just because we thought that we kept hearing over and over again from the beginning of time that the Raptors and the Hawks were the two teams interested in Anthony Davis, that they were having discussions with the Mavericks. That was all Shams kept saying on SportsCenter whenever he talked about Anthony Davis was that line. So the Wizards just came out of nowhere, and then once it kind of sank in, I wasn't filled with jubilation just because the return is just not that sick, but it's also like a deal they had to do, a deal I'm happy with. Michael Finley and Matt Riccardi, I think, did a great job in getting something for someone that literally can't play more than 5 straight games in a Dallas Mavericks jersey. And
who knows, may never do it for the rest of his career.
they did what they had to do. So, like you said, financial flexibility. So it's not like a go to the bar and get shots type of night, but it is like a have a beer. It is like a have a beer type of night. So cheers, fellas. Cheers.
No, I thought about having a beer as well, but I took a more logical approach, but cheers. I should be having one right now. But yeah, I think my number one reaction was the main asset that the Mavericks are acquiring in this deal is the financial flexibility. They're sending out $68 million in salary. They're taking back just over $43 million. So right there, they're reducing their payroll by 25 million or almost 25 million, and they're getting under the second apron, they're getting under the first apron, and they're getting under the luxury tax. So they're no longer subject to any of those penalties, and they can, actually start to have a real chance to build around Cooper Flag. Now, like you said, the return is extremely underwhelming, and let's get into it right now, because Khris Middleton, 34 years old, he's an expiring deal, owed $33 million for the rest of the season. We'll see if the Mavericks buy him out or if they keep him. A.J. Johnson, you can look at his stats. He's a young player, but I don't know if he has much of a future in the league, just looking at his numbers. Malakai Branham, you might be familiar with him from his days with the Spurs. He's an interesting wing, can shoot a little bit, but again, he's a role player at best and probably a lower tier role player. And then Marvin Bagley, like I said, is probably the best player that they're getting back in this deal. I think obviously we know Marvin Bagley for being the player that the Kings drafted over Luka in 2018, but he's carved out a nice little career for himself as a backup big, a pick and roll lob threat, can shoot it every now and then. I mean, this season he's shooting 62.6% from the field, 42% from three on half an attempt per game, averaging 10 points per game. So again, nice backup big. We'll see if the Mavericks keep him or they flip him for other assets. And then as far as the picks go, obviously 3 second-round picks, pretty self-explanatory. I'm not sure what picks they are exactly. We'll have to look into that. But the first-round picks, I think, are the most important things to discuss because the 2 picks are a 2026 pick from the OKC Thunder, which, with the way this season is going to end up 30th. So the very last pick of the first round this year. And the other pick is a 2030 pick to the Golden State Warriors. And on the surface, that looks like an amazing pick because in 2030, the Warriors are probably going to be terrible. But unfortunately, that's a top 20 protected pick. So there's a decent chance that pick doesn't convey and becomes, I think, a second or 2 seconds. So in reality, the Mavericks got a very late first-round pick and a fake first-round pick in addition to 3 seconds, and then the poo-poo platter of expiring role players that I just mentioned right now. Does that change the way that you guys evaluate this trade? Vinay, I'll start with you.
I'm personally probably over-obsessed with the 2026 draft, but I was honestly happy that they got any sort of pick in the first round for this year, just because I think the draft is that deep. Like you said, that pick's probably going to end up 30th, but I think there's going to be a semi-promising prospect that'll be there. And like we see in most drafts that aren't even historic, players that are taken at 30th or even after 30th, people are like, how did they fall that far? They could turn into good role players. So I think there's something that can be gained with that 30th pick, and that's probably going to end up being the best asset that comes from this trade. I think getting seconds for however you use the seconds, whether it's to dump players later or just drafting them outright, I feel like it's a W2. But at the end of the day, it's not Anthony Davis in his prime that we traded away. It was Anthony Davis that couldn't play 5 straight games, Anthony Davis that is on a really bad contract as is, and then Anthony Davis who has an agent that is pressuring teams for an extension. So good luck to the Wizards with that.
Yeah, as I described it, they freed themselves from the Anthony Davis era, which was short-lived. 367 days, 29 regular season games, 2 play-in games, 587 total points in the regular season. It was extremely short-lived. Like the peak of the Anthony Davis era was the very first game that he played, those 2.5 quarters with Kyrie and AD looking like world beaters before AD got hurt. It peaked on February 8th, 2025, and we're here today on February 4th. And he was traded for nothing. OKC's first round pick and Marvin Bagley. Like, those are the only 2 things worth mentioning from this trade. Fazil, how do you evaluate this trade, all things considered?
I mean, it is a little tough because, this move was made with an emphasis on the cap space, like you guys have mentioned. And I don't know how I feel about this front office's team building capacities and what they can pull off in free agency because, well, frankly, the guy who's been pulling the strings for the last couple of years is gone. We don't exactly know how good, Matt Riccardi and Finley are at doing this without, oversight above them. We don't know who we're going to hire as a GM in the offseason, all of that. So I don't know what they're going to pull off. Hopefully something good. I do think that getting out of the cap hell that we were in as basically a team at the second apron is so important for as long as we're in Cooper's rookie contract. So that's great on its own. It does irk me, that it's shades of the KP trade where you sell at what's basically a player's absolute low. And when you had already given so much up to get him in the first place. So that stings, but you can't like really look back at that shit and wallow in that. I think, just this future focusing move is definitely what needed to be done. I think, of course, we've all said it before. The best time to trade AD was back in the summer last year. But the second best time is now. So I am glad that it's happened. I do think that I mean this isn't the Donnie Nelson Mavericks, so I do think they're actually going to use that money and spend it. So this upcoming free agency class is like nothing special, I think, but there's definitely pieces to build around on the margins and replenishing our second round picks. That's huge because as we've seen in the trade market for the past, year or so, second round picks have probably as much value as they've ever had. So that's nothing to scoff at. Um, as far as the first round draft capital goes, it's okay. Getting more cracks at it in the first round this year is definitely good. I do think that this shouldn't be the end of it. More trades are needed, like by tomorrow, but it's a good first step. I mean, like, I don't feel I don't feel bad about it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the financial flexibility was the main asset that they acquired in this deal, and it got them under both aprons. It got them under the luxury tax. I will say this: they're still over the salary cap, but at the same time, pretty much every team these days is over the salary cap. So, they're in a much more workable position to build around Cooper. They're going to have the full mid-level exception in free agency next season. They're not subject to a lot of the punitive restrictions that come with being a first apron and possibly a second apron team. We'll see what they can do. With the deadline being tomorrow. I mean, they have some players. Daniel Gafford has been in trade rumors. We'll see if Khris Middleton or Marvin Bagley, if those players get moved. Klay Thompson, not banking on it. But, the Mavericks, I think most importantly, have acquired more draft picks. Like, they got 3 seconds. And, they had, I think, 5 first-round picks available to them. Not all of them are controlled by them. But, like, if you look at their first, they own their first this year. Next year, they owe it to Charlotte, top 2 protected. 2028 is a swap with OKC. 29, they have the Lakers pick from, what trade that was from. 2030, again, owed a swap to San Antonio, but that can be traded. And then
How do we get
2030,
that?
that was in the Grant Williams sign and trade.
Nice.
Yeah,
Super
so
cool.
we're extremely leveraged right now, but we own our 2031 pick and our 2032 pick, and now the Mavericks got an additional pick in this year's draft from Oklahoma City, and they got the 2030 pick from the Warriors. So in total, that's, I believe, 7 tradable first round picks that the Mavericks have now. Now, a lot of them are not true first because they're leveraged on swaps, or in the case of the Warriors pick, it's top 20 protected. So again, these are not all true first round picks, or pure first round picks rather, but they're assets nonetheless. So there's that aspect of it. But I just feel like the Mavericks were never going to get the value that they needed out of Anthony Davis for a variety of reasons. First of all, when you talk about winners and losers of this trade, the Mavericks lost this trade the minute that they traded for Anthony Davis. They traded Luka Doncic, a 25-year-old at the time, future Hall of Famer in his prime, for 33-year-old Anthony Davis, or 32-year-old Anthony Davis at this time. Like Vinay mentioned at the top of the stream, he has not played more than 5 consecutive games for the Mavericks. In the totality of his Mavericks tenure, he's played in just 29 games. They were never going to get the on-court production from him that they needed to even remotely justify the trade. So they were never going to trade him for anything close to what they gave up. Even if he played at an all-star level, they still would not have, just because of who he was versus who Luka Doncic was when they traded him. So from that perspective, I don't even think it's worth debating whether the Mavericks settled for a good or bad deal. They settled for a bad deal the minute that they traded Luka Doncic, and that's how I'm choosing to view this deal.
I hate all the
All right.
engagement bait tweets that we see today just based on, oh, the Mavericks traded Luka Doncic for Khris Middleton and Marvin Bagley and stuff like that. Like, maybe that was part of the reason why the front office, and not front office, but mainly Patrick Dumont didn't want to go through with an Anthony Davis trade if the reports are true, was because he didn't want further embarrassment from that trade. But I'm glad the Mavericks got over their feelings and just pulled the trigger on this. I'm shocked that they got this before this deadline. I've probably mentioned on a stream before that I didn't think that they were going to get anything close to this, which is why I probably wanted to keep him going into the summer. But the Wizards blessed us again.
Yeah, the Wizards saved us twice. I mean, the parallels between this and the Kristaps Porzingis trade are pretty uncanny. But honestly, in this case, it might even be a better deal than what we got for KP, because in the case of the Porzingis trade, we didn't even get any draft picks in return, and we got two bad contracts. What they did basically was split the Kristaps Porzingis contract into two bad smaller deals in Spencer Dinwiddie and Davis Bertans. In this case, at least, we acquired mostly expiring salary and got some draft picks. So, and the thing that we haven't even talked about, like we've been focusing a lot on Anthony Davis, and rightfully so, but the Mavericks also moved two of their own bad contracts to the Wizards in this deal as well. I mean, I did not think that they would be able to trade Jaden Hardy or D'Angelo Russell in separate deals, let alone with Anthony Davis. So I think from that perspective, you know, you have to commend Matt Riccardi and Michael Finley for bamboozling the Wizards front office into acquiring this deal. And I'm not trying to say that to say the Mavericks got some amazing deal, but at the end of the day, these were three players that were giving them nothing, and they had to move them for not only their present but their future, and they did that. So I think when you put that in perspective too, it makes the deal look a little bit better. But yeah, it's been a little bit frustrating to see those tweets like, oh, the Mavericks traded Luka for, you know, these random ass players, which yes, in a way that they did. But the minute that they got Cooper Flag, it sort of changed the calculus on the Luka trade, and it just bailed them out from that to where they no longer had to be burdened by the past, and they could move forward and have a clean slate, and that's what they chose to do today.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, if you look at the Mavericks cap sheet, obviously they still have quite a few large contracts still on the books. You know, Gafford, PJ, Clay. Clay's at least expiring next season, and I mean, I wonder how many outright overpays we still have on the roster, because, like, you know, Hardy and D'Lo, they're not exactly on huge contracts, but they're getting paid more than they're worth, right? I think the only, by that definition, overpay that we still have is probably Clay, but even he's like tradable in my opinion. And even, like, you know, Gafford and PJ are making a lot on their new contract extensions that kick in next season, but still, like, I don't think those are bad deals that they're just like albatrosses the Mavs can never get off of. So I think in terms of financial flexibility, they really did do a good job of getting off of some of the worst money that was still on the books. So yeah, on that, like, from that perspective, I think that's one of the biggest wins for the Mavs.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I did not, like I said, I did not think they could move those guys individually, let alone in combination. So I think in aggregate, it was a good deal for the Mavericks to do this. You know, you can't compare the returns of the Luka Doncic for AD trade versus today's trade. The two different goals were at play. It was a horrible deal to begin with. I'm glad that Patrick Dumont didn't let his ego get in the way of this deal, because let's be honest, yeah, it causes some extra embarrassment, but you were the guy who greenlit the Luka Doncic trade. You have to live with that for the rest of your life, or the rest of the time you own the Mavericks. So I'm glad that that wasn't the driving force behind this deal. I'm glad that he let Matt and Michael Finley get this deal done and chart the course for the future. And honestly, I'm believing in them a little bit more than I was 24 hours ago, because I was ready to call for everyone's job today and say it's just time to clean house and move forward and get a new direction. But, you know, Matt Riccardi, Michael Finley, wasn't familiar with their game.
You did call for people's jobs yesterday. You weren't ready to do it, but you already did it yesterday.
I mean, I did a little bit, but I was ready to go out and say they just need to fire everyone, which I guess I did have a tweet that said that. But, I was just getting a little bit tired of, and I understood the reason why there was so little momentum behind Mavericks trades. Like, Nico Harrison built this roster for Luka Doncic, traded Luka for pennies on the dollar. I won't even say pennies on the dollar. Choose your currency that has a poor exchange rate with the US dollar, like, Indian rupees for the dollar, right? Like that. That is what he traded Luka Doncic for. And then tripled down on that roster that he built for Luka. Signed Gafford to an extension, signed PJ Washington to an extension, traded for Caleb Martin. I mean, I guess that wasn't a Luka deal, but you know what I'm saying? Like, acquired all these guys that don't fit together. And that's why the Mavericks were in this position where they couldn't move anyone. So I'm like, okay, well, the next thing you have to do is find a way to get some value from the players you have on this roster. If you're going to be stuck with them going into next season, whether it's the coach, whether it's the GM, you as an organization need to have a new basketball philosophy to maximize the players on your roster so that you can trade them and eventually build around Cooper Flag. Now, I think, this counts as a major reshuffling of the roster. And like I said, all four of the guys that the Mavericks acquired today very well may not be on the team to start next season. So this counts as a full-blown reset. And like I said, we'll see what they can do with Daniel Gafford, Klay Thompson, or even Khris Middleton and Marvin Bagley before tomorrow's 2 p.m. Central trade deadline. Do you guys expect any other moves to come? Vinay, go first.
I feel like Gafford doesn't really have any trade value at this point. I honestly feel like maybe he's even maybe a negative contract at this point. Maybe you can get a second round pick, but I don't think it's worth it to sell this low on him when he's been dealing with. I mean, this is crazy. He's been dealing with an ankle injury since training camp, and it's February. Like, I don't understand how that's even possible. I don't know who is in charge of the Mavs medical staff these days, but he shouldn't have been playing some of these games. And I mean, yesterday was medical malpractice at its finest. So I don't think he'll be traded, honestly, especially after the Hawks went after and got Jock Landale. Klay Thompson, I'm 30-70. He's probably going to stay. Or 70-30, he's probably going to stay. But, I mean, teams always need shooting. I don't think he's been as bad as whatever the casual NBA fan thinks. Like, I think he's been a good soldier. He could still shoot the rock. So I could see maybe him getting interest, but the contract is definitely the hurdle there. Najee is kind of an interesting one, especially after Jason Kidd literally said out loud, which is crazy in itself, right? To say that he could be traded. He needs a PR coach like at any moment. But if a team offers you something nice, I think you have to like consider it. Like, as much as I love Najee and I've talked about it, and I didn't think that the team was going to give you the right trade for him. Him and Coop are kind of a clunky fit together. The wings that Coop's going to be next to need to be able to shoot, and Najee, for as much as we like him, isn't a good shooter. He can definitely get into the paint and shoot floaters, but that's not you can't always do that. You can't pass up open threes consistently like he does at times. So
I like Najee off the bench as a sixth man, just microwave scorer type guy who can, get in the lane and score with efficiency. But I do agree with you that around Cooper, he's not the ideal fit just because he can't really shoot that well. And it's been working out okay this season because they lack creators and guards. But long term, I agree with you. It's not a super amazing fit.
And it's kind of, he's not necessarily like in the contract year per se, but he is extension eligible. So he's going to get a big extension this summer. And I wouldn't be mad if he got it necessarily, but it's also something you have to consider when you're thinking about the trade market, because he's on a $8 million per year contract for the next 2 years, but you do have to make a decision on that with the extension. And he's going to get a big bag, I would think, on the extension. So I don't think he's necessarily safe by any means. Does Caleb Martin have any trade interest off of these few Mickey Mouse weeks?
I doubt it, but he's been looking a little bit better. So like I said, if he plays like this all of next season, I could see them being able to trade him next deadline. But, the thing is, the Mavericks, I know that there was some buzz from a lot of like fake sources on Twitter this evening about Kyrie Irving's future with the Mavericks, but I just don't think that the Mavericks can fully bottom out going into next season. Yes, they want to build around Cooper Flag, but the reality of the situation is they don't control their pick. They have to be somewhat competitive. And, if
Let
you're
me play devil's advocate. I don't like, okay, if someone gives you a good offer for Kyrie, and yes, you don't have your picks next year, but if it's like the best thing to do for Cooper's future, I'm willing to bite the bullet and give Charlotte a lottery pick if it comes to that in a bad draft. Like I'm not going to lose sleep over that.
that
If it helps build the Cooper timeline, like I'm chilling. Like I understand the sentiment. I've brought it up before that the Mavericks have to be competitive next year, but I don't necessarily feel that way anymore. Like it's all about Cooper's timeline, whatever is best for Cooper's future, building around Cooper. So like if you give the Hornets a top 10 pick and a bad draft from what it looks like right now, I'm not going to be that mad.
Well, yeah, I agree. I think it's predicated on them getting a good offer for Kyrie. I guess I'm just not convinced they can because Kyrie is about to turn 34. He's coming off of a torn ACL. Will there be teams willing to give up worthwhile assets for Kyrie? I'm skeptical of it. Which is why I said that. But Fazil, how competitive do you think the Mavericks should be next season, or need to be rather? Granted that they owe their first round pick to the Hornets.
How competitive do I think they need to be? I mean, I don't think they need to go all in on winning and try to assemble the best roster they can just because, it's shameful to give up lottery picks. I think that's a little short-sighted if, the alternative is just getting more assets for the future, not necessarily your own picks back, but just anything. You know, I think we're not necessarily like I think more than having your own draft pick, having any draft picks in general for whatever you can get from this roster if you trade them off, as well as young players, young prospects who have the potential to develop, and then cap space to go out and target other such players in free agency. I think that's a fine way to build around Cooper. I mean, you trade away AD, you're kind of halfway there to resetting the timeline. Who knows what Kyrie wants to do? Like, if he wants to stay, then I'm down for it. Like, if he wants to be the mentor or whatever, I'm more than cool that he's certainly earned that. And at the same time, though, if you can do a full reset and you can just go totally young youth movement, you have athletes and shooters around Coop, and you build a team that's like completely catering to his strengths. Like, yeah, of course I want to see that too. So there's, I mean, okay, there are a million ways to become good in the NBA. I think the current constraints that teams have with the second apron and are a little limiting, and that's concerning because we still don't know necessarily what the Mavs are going to hand out with contracts in the future. Like, if you're going to keep Najee, then he's going to make way more than $8 million, right, on per year. Derek Lively still up first contract extension, and then who knows who else we might get in that time frame, even in free agency, whoever. Like, there's just, from that perspective, going for a full reset looks more appealing to me. Like, but I don't know. I don't think like trying to win a bunch of games. I don't think like trying to make the playoffs is the number one priority for next year, but maybe like 2 years from now, yeah, by then we probably should be trying to make the playoffs.
I think whatever the Mavericks do with regards to Kyrie or with regards to Clay or PJ Washington, bottom line is it can't just be a move for the sake of blowing it up and resetting the timeline. The Mavericks kind of did that with today's trade. Now you have to be a little bit more deliberate with what you do going forward. And, if it means not selling your veterans short, then that's what you have to do. If it means keeping them for a little bit longer, that's how you have to do it. Because I think you need to show Cooper Flag that there's some direction next year. I don't think that he wants to endure another season like this one. With all the losing and all the distractions that have been there, this season, the Mavericks need to sort of stabilize things next year to where there's not all this outside noise just dominating the narrative throughout the season. Like, at some point, hopefully we can get back to talking about the Mavericks basketball games and not just about what they're going to do with their team build and the trade deadline and such and such. I mean, obviously those are going to be important questions until they can establish a true contender around Cooper. but the noise has just been relentless this season. And the AD will they, won't they thing has, we've talked about it before. It's been kind of overshadowing an amazing rookie season from Cooper. And obviously these last 3 games from Cooper Flag have really shown you just how good that he is and how ready he is to be the Mavericks franchise player. But there were instances of this throughout the season that just fell under the radar because of, the main narrative was, are they going to move AD, or is he going to go to the Raptors? Is he going to go to the Hawks? Are they going to keep him? Patrick Dumont wants to see Kyrie and AD and Coop together. Like, it was just getting to be too much. And so, long story short, to answer that question that I asked you guys, I think the Mavericks do need to be as competitive as they can be next season, but they don't need to force the issue. And let's say a good deal for Kyrie comes up between now and tomorrow, with picks or potentially a young player that has potential, then yeah, you seriously consider it. But, if you're getting picks like you got today, or you're getting just expirings, I don't think I'm trading Kyrie, because at least right now you can say that they have 2 stars. And let's say that Kyrie comes back, he looks good, and the Mavs have trade interest in Kyrie next season from a contender. I feel like they could get something of a little bit more value than they could get at this deadline. But I don't know. Maybe Minnesota, for example, misses out on Giannis and is just desperate to add to their team to compete this year, and they give you a good offer from Kyrie, then you consider it. But
Detroit, Houston, I feel like those are 2 teams that
maybe
would benefit greatly from Kyrie services. So the only problem is we haven't seen Kyrie hit the court since the ACL injury. So it's going to give some teams pause just based on, or depending on how much they would want to give up. I don't think a team would just go all in on Kyrie at this stage without seeing him on the floor. But I mean, I never thought Anthony Davis was going to get traded to the Wizards today, so you never know what can happen in this league. I do want to see Kyrie and Coop together. I feel like that's a good pairing. My issue with a lot of these vets, though, is that I don't feel like they're good fits with Coop. Like, I don't know if PJ. I feel strongly that PJ is not a good fit with Coop. I guess we'll see how it goes with. Anthony Davis hasn't really been playing with them, but for sure those 3 didn't work together. I guess we can see what it looks like with Coop and PJ, but I have a lot of skepticism about that fit. I feel like PJ should go in the offseason, and he can go defend Nico Harrison on his new team. And then Daniel Gafford.
Hey, bro, don't rule out Malakai Branham unlocking PJ Washington's full potential.
I've ruled it out. Daniel Gafford, another one. Like I talked about, I don't know what his trade market necessarily is. I've talked about how a stretch 5 would do wonders for Coop's, just ability to drive to the paint. Even Mark Cuban tweeted about it, actually, funny enough, about how spacing would do a lot for Cooper.
We talked about it before Mark Cuban did, too. Like, obviously, that is the vision around this team. We'll see how quickly they can get it done. I just think it's hilarious that Mark Cuban is, like, kind of talking shit. Yeah.
He still yaps. Like, he sold the team and he's just nonstop yapping. Like, the draft day press conference with Coop, the press conference that we went to, Fossil, when he did the media scrum and was saying that Nico Harrison has set him up like as well as any team in the second apron era, and we're going to do it on a different podcast. He talked about how our season's going to go, as well as Anthony Davis and Derek Lively shooting threes. Like, it's crazy that he sold the team, doesn't have a lot to say, and matters maybe a little bit more nowadays, but he's just yapping all the time. But anyways, like a stretch 5 next to Coop is the ideal fit, but it's hard to find, honestly. Like, if you really think about it, it's not like everyone thought that this modern era of basketball was going to include all these stretch 5s, which it's more and more, but it's still a hard like archetype to find, because usually those stretch 5s are bad rebounders in the case of Miles Turner, Jaren Jackson, and players like that. So it's not necessarily a given, but if you can't get a stretch 5, get shooters around Coop, and this team doesn't have a lot of shooters. The only player that I feel confident about building next to Cooper with is probably Max Christie, and even he's like had a little bit of a slump lately, but I'm not worried about him long term. Like, to me, that's like a bona fide, surely good fit next to Coop. But it takes a lot more than, one player next to Coop. Kyrie's a good fit next to Coop, but how long is that going to last?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, again, Kyrie's 34. At this point, every good year that he has is a bonus. And, look, again, none of the players the Mavericks acquired today are going to do anything for them in the present or the future. Malakai Branham has a decent 37.8% three-point percentage, but he attempts 1.3 three-pointers a game, averages 4.6 points per game, was averaging 9.8 minutes per game for the Washington Wizards. I'm sorry, but Malakai Branham is not going to be on the Mavericks next season. I'd be very surprised if that were the case. And he is young, like he's 22 years old. But the reality is, you could do a lot better, and you could hopefully get someone better to fill that spot in. But this season, the Mavericks have put themselves in good position to lose a lot more games. But I agree with you. Shooting, still playmaking, those are the top priorities right now. And I think a stretch five is really the missing piece right now to sort of complete a first iteration of a competitive team. You have the point guard in Kyrie. You obviously have Cooper Flag. Najee Marshall, you can debate the fit, but I think he's a talented player. Max Christie is there as well. And then you have Daniel Gafford / PJ Washington to play the five. Derek Lively will come back next season too. So you have some guys that you can throw out there and potentially be competitive. But you need more. You need a good bench guard. You need, I would say, like 3 or 4 more shooters, honestly. And to be honest, you need a stretch big man, because that's really the key to unlocking the full offensive potential of Cooper Flag and the Mavericks. We've talked about this several times at this point. Like, look how easy it is for Coop to get into the lane and score at the rim right now. Imagine how much easier it would look with a stretch five that forces the defense to play away from the basket. And as Mark Cuban said, teams can't pack the paint anymore. So it's the Mavericks will be one of the best offenses in the league when that happens. It just remains to be seen how soon that can happen, because like you said, Vinay, that's not an easy player to find.
And Cooper's made such a leap as a ball handler that if they're going to bring in a new guard, like a point guard of the future in the draft or whatever, that guard needs to be able to play off ball. Because I honestly want Coop with the ball in his hands, like, even more than I thought I would. Like, I just want the ball in his hands. He makes the right plays a lot of times. He had such a Luka-like pass to Najee in the corner yesterday that he just bricked. But I just want the ball in Coop's hands as much as possible. It's not going to look like the Luka heliocentrism ball with, all that. But basically kind of like that. Like, I want Coop to handle most of the possessions and make the plays. And if you get spacing and people have to double Coop, and like you said, we're going to have one of the best offenses in the league one day.
Yeah, and that day could be as soon as next season, honestly. I mean, I think that Coop with greater usage will be an even more like statistically productive player. And, we have to bake in some improvement from three as well. Like, he's shooting 28% from three this season. If he even improves that to 32% next year, that's that probably accounts for at least 3 more points per game from Coop. So if we can just get some shooters, man, like, this team is going to look a lot more watchable. Like, I watch every single opponent every night against the Mavericks, and I'm so jealous of the teams that can just get up 30, 40 threes a night and hit.
Like the Celtics.
Yeah,
the
like the Celtics.
That's a great team build, team philosophy for how to build around Coop. They don't even have Jason Tatum out there, but they're still, like, chucking up threes. It's a
Luka
5-out
Garza,
offense.
Peyton Pritchard. There was this other white dude on the Celtics that I don't even know whose name is.
Baylor Shireman.
Yeah, Sam Hauser.
But I mean, you saw Jaylen Brown. You play a little one-on-one ball, but he's able to get to the rim, draw fouls when he can, and I mean, the ceiling is frightening for Cooper. I mean, I've told y'all maybe individually, we haven't necessarily tweeted out, but this dude's going to be like an all-time great.
Yeah, he's solidifying himself to be, the star of tomorrow, and that tomorrow is very close to today. We talked about on the last podcast that, between Luka's rookie season and his second season, the improvement of that team really came from Luka Doncic's improvement. Yes, they got Kristaps Porzingis, but that was the main deal that they made. They didn't acquire really anyone that offseason besides Boban and DeLon Wright, which neither of those guys particularly made a huge dent in the Mavericks rotation that season. So
it's actually hilarious how many bad moves the Mavericks made during Luka's rookie contract.
I mean,
KP trade, which I was in favor of in the moment, but I mean, that just put them in behind the 8 ball immediately. And then that famous free agency where we were literally waiting on Danny Green and his buddy for a decision on his podcast. Goodness gracious, man. So we're off to a better start in that regard. We're not in the aprons with Cooper and his rookie contract. We're off the Anthony Davis train, and I mean, maybe I'm too optimistic about this 30th pick that we're about to get, but I think we can get a good player, and I trust Matt Riccardi. I feel like has a good scouting background. Michael Finley, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, is the one that is pounded the table for Jalen Brunson during that Luka draft. So those two guys did a great job in adding to their resume for the permanent job. Where I mean, this trade came out of nowhere. I had thought it had no chance of happening, to the point where I don't. They deserve a fair shot at the permanent. You know, they should go through the search and all that, but they deserve a fair shot at the permanent gig.
I mean, we said this on the last pod. If they could do this, they deserve a shot at it, and they did it. So I think there's a lot to believe in them. And Matt Riccardi, you know, he was promoted from the head of scouting with the Mavericks to being the assistant GM. So I think, you know, he's still pretty young. I don't even know if he's 40 years old. So he's definitely been working his way up the ranks in the NBA, and I definitely think that at some point he's going to be ready to be a general manager, whether it's with the Mavericks or with another team. But let's quickly look at some of the best 30th overall picks, you know, from recent history, because obviously this is where we're going to be picking in addition to wherever the Mavericks land in the lottery. But some names that just jump out: Peyton Watson, Santi Aldama, Desmond Bane, Kevon Looney, Kyle Anderson, Jimmy Butler was a 30th overall pick as well. So you can certainly find players in that range. You know, maybe not all of them will be as good as Jimmy Butler or Gilbert Arenas. Well, I guess back when Gilbert Arenas was drafted, the 30th pick was the second round. But, you know, the point is you can find a player. They may not be as good as a Desmond Bane or a Jimmy Butler, but you know, Santi Aldama, if they can get a player like him, that's a pretty good piece to have, right? So I wouldn't write this pick off as horrible. I mean, yeah, there's a low likelihood it ever pans out into anything, but in a really talented draft like this one, you can absolutely find a diamond in the rough. And we've seen the Mavericks be able to scout pretty well and hit on some of the undrafted guys with Ryan Nembhard and Moussa Cisse. So I have a fair level of confidence that they could find someone with the 30th pick as well.
The only thing I might be, I mean, not even like it's going to be a deep draft regardless, but I've been thinking about it, and now it's a little bit more of a to the front of my mind that, you know, some of these kids might take an NIL bag, go back to college and enter the weaker draft next year. But barring that happening to like so many players, I feel like we should be in a good spot at 30, which sounds crazy to say, but I firmly believe that. And it's going to be 30, by the way, because the Thunder, the NBA draft standings are order after the lottery, I think, is based on regular season standings. It's not based on necessarily where you finish in the playoffs. So even if Oklahoma City got knocked out second round, but they finished with the best record in the regular season, that pick's going to end up 30th.
Yeah, and
that's right.
I think they're far and away the best team in the league. So,
yeah, record-wise. So I just, out of curiosity,
was that meant to be a shot?
No, not a shot, but just like, you know, based off of the draft projection. But anyway, I think you guys might be a little more attuned to the draft boards than I am. So who lately has been floating around at number 30 on the draft boards?
I've been super locked in on like the top 10, so it's hard to really like give you names for 30th. But I mean, now looking forward, I'll see what kind of names are there. That'll be exciting. But there's a Texas wing named Dalen Swan that's like around that range on some big boards, but I think he's gonna rise. Arizona has a guard named Braylon Burries, but I think he's gonna rise too. There's still like a lot of fluctuation that's gonna happen with draft boards and all that stuff between now and, I mean, the tournament hasn't even happened yet, so that's a huge resume booster for whoever. So I mean, we'll see. And we also, like I said earlier, like I feel like some of these kids are going to take an NIL bag, which is just kind of different from past drafts. Kids are just more willing to stay in college, and with the added bonus of next year's draft being bad on paper, you could raise your draft stock and be a top 10 pick next year as opposed to being a pick in the 20s this year.
There's a Shams notification. Oh, nothing of note. Oh, I guess there was a trade. The Magic traded Tyus Jones to the Charlotte Hornets. The league is shaking. But yeah, I had to click just because you never know what it is at this time of the year. But yeah, I mean, to be honest, I have not really looked at the draft at all. That's never been my specialty. I think, Vinay, you're the most dialed into college basketball of all of us. But look, after the deadline, I think we're going to have to pivot towards the draft because that's obviously the next major milestone for the Mavs. That's where they're going to. What? What are you?
I pivoted to the draft when we lost to the Wizards the second game of the season.
Well, yes, that's true. You did. But like I said, you've always been the most dialed into college basketball. I think now, obviously, after the trade deadline, there are no more trades that can happen until the offseason. The draft will be the next time the Mavericks can acquire an impact player, which is why I was saying, we can pivot to the draft. And obviously, their draft standing is going to get more and more certain as the season gets closer to the end, as they, knock on wood, lose more games. With Malakai Branham and AJ Johnson leading the tank. So it's going to come into more focus. And, we'll see. I mean, we'll have to talk about, will there be more opportunities for the Mavericks to potentially package the 30th pick and, PJ Washington, for example, to move up in the draft? I don't know if that's a viable scenario, but that's obviously something that they have to be looking at, assuming they don't trade that OKC pick between now and tomorrow. So a lot of possibilities on the horizon for the Mavs.
Trade everything from the 7th overall pick to one of those poverty teams that the teams we're thinking of, the Kings or Nets, and fleece them for a top 3 pick. Package it all.
We'll see. I do wonder if the Mavericks can package whatever stuff they have now and try and get, a younger role player with star potential. That might be something worth looking into as well. Like, I don't have any names off the top of my head, but do you think that's viable at all, or do they not have enough for something like that?
For this deadline?
No, like even in the off season too. Like if there's a potential move they could make.
I don't think they should. All jokes. I mean, I don't think they should just package their picks for that type of player yet. The only reason I would, like, if you have the opportunity, I don't think any of these teams are that. They can't be that stupid. But I also never thought that a team would trade away Luka on draft night. So you never know, I guess. But I would only package those picks together if I could get one of those top 2 guys in Darren Peterson or Cam Boozer.
Yeah. I mean, what if you could get into what's the lowest pick you would trade PJ and the OKC pick for? Like, if you got into, between 15 and 20, would you do that deal? I feel like you would, but
I mean, I would, but it depends. It depends on how the tiers of the draft go. Like every draft has its tiers, so there's cutoffs at certain ranges. So if you can get up into a tier that you can't necessarily get a player of that tier at 30, and you can at 22 or something like that, then sure, pull the trigger. PJ has to play better basketball before he has I don't know what his trade market is at this point. We don't really know because he's not tradable, but he has to stop dribbling like Stanley from The Office to have his trade value a little bit up.
Maybe he's still depressed that they fired Nico.
Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see if the Mavericks can move him this deadline. I mean, I'm interested to see if they can move Gafford before tomorrow. But like you said, even if they don't, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. I think Gafford has been playing a little bit better in the last 2 games. Like even yesterday, even though he got hurt, he still finished with a double-double in that game. He's showing a little bit more bounce.
Sorry to bring this up again. How is someone dealing with an ankle injury from training camp? How is that even possible?
I don't know. It's kind of funny because he lost weight over the offseason. So I was going to say maybe he's just too heavy. And maybe he is too heavy because the ankle has been, affecting his conditioning. But it's just crazy that happened in training camp and he has just not recovered from it.
I mean, that's just... I'm not a doctor, man, but if someone's clearly looking like that, you got to sit him out for a little bit. If he gets hurt again, that's just bad luck. But I feel like he's just fighting through, whatever injury he's dealing with just for the sake of whatever. It's just not worth it. They got to tell him to sit down. Yesterday was crazy. He got hurt and then everyone crashed out on Twitter and then he came back in. It was like they were trolling us.
I was the one who crashed out on Twitter. I was calling for people's jobs, talking shit about Patrick Dumont, although that still will continue. But, I'm glad that both those crash outs led to positive outcomes and Daniel Gafford coming back and Anthony Davis getting traded. It's been a decent 24 hours for Mavs fans, I would say.
Yeah, I'm not so convinced that our medical staff has gotten that much better from the garbage that it was last season. The results so far this year have not been super convincing. I think I saw a graphic on the game last night that said the Mavs have lost the fifth most games to injury out of the entire league this year. So that's obviously when you employ fragile players, that plays a part into it too. But I don't think that still doesn't really reflect well on a training staff. So I don't know. It might be time to cut loose on some of these guys before something catastrophic happens. But I'm not trying to get too grim here, but it is a little rough, specifically with Gafford. Like that dude really does have to take. I'm surprised he didn't take a month off at the beginning of the season just to get right.
Because
I
he's
think he took
scared.
like a week or two.
He's scared about losing it. He's scared about losing his job to Musa Sisa.
I think Gafford actually did miss around 3 weeks from the training camp injury to when he actually returned, but clearly didn't do shit. And yes, our training staff needs a continued overhaul because it hasn't been delivering results. I just think it's so crazy that up until today, obviously in the trade, the two highest players on the team were basically sitting on the bench.
Two highest or two highest paid?
Two highest paid players on the team.
You said highest. Yeah, I thought you were I thought you were making a Brandon Williams reference. My bad.
Oh, I forgot. Did that happen this season? Him getting arrested at
yeah.
Terminal C? Wow, it's been a long year, man. But the two highest paid players on the team in Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving played a combined, I don't know how many games, 20 games this season. And all of those games were played by Anthony Davis.
29. No.
29
Oh.
over the AD played 29 over the course of 1.5 years. But this season, between Kyrie and AD, they played 20 combined games, of which Kyrie played 0, Anthony Davis played 20. Like, that is just no way to build a team around a 19-year-old phenom on a rookie contract. Like, that would have been a travesty if they had to continue going down that path. Like, that's just so depressing.
The craziest part about the whole win now thing, which was probably was fool's gold the whole time, is that Cooper might be ready to win now. Like he might be legitimately ready to win games right now. Maybe not as your number one, but if you had a bona fide number one, and have him as your number two, this year or something like that, maybe you could have won a playoff series or something like that. But the whole we talked about it at length. The whole building your team around two of the greatest of all time Robins, wasn't going to ever really be that feasible, especially because they can't play basketball games. That's the
Aging
biggest problem.
Robins, yeah. Exactly. And again, we talked about, that was the point I wanted to bring up earlier was the Mavericks' improvement from Luka's rookie year to his second year was almost entirely driven by Luka becoming this first-team All-NBA talent. And if Cooper is able to do that, next season, which I don't want to pile him on with unfair expectations, but at this point, you've seen what he's done in the last 3 games. If he's producing at or close to that level on a nightly basis next season, the Mavericks will be competing for a low playoff seed next year. He's just that type of talent, and he's going to keep getting better. And by his third season, he's going to be one of the top 15, maybe 10 players in the league. I'm not saying he's going to be as good as Luka is because Luka's a special type of offensive talent, but I think he's going to improve both offensively and defensively. What does that player look like in 2 years, right? So his improvement could factor in a lot to what the team does next season, even if they don't do a ton in terms of being aggressive in talent acquisition. That being said, I hope that they try to be creative because that's one thing that the Mavericks didn't do under Donnie Nelson was be creative. But I feel like I have a lot more faith in them to do that now than I did back in 2019, 2020.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just crazy that this is like basically the worst Cooper's ever going to be until some unspecified time in the 2040s.
The 2040s. How many years away is that? 14? Damn.
Yes.
And
In
he'll
2040, he'll only be like 32, 33. Kyrie's age, a little younger than Kyrie right now.
Hey, in the words of a former general manager, we might be buried by then. Hopefully not. Hopefully not. But that was just a joke, actually. So scratch that from the record. No one say anything about it. But yeah, it's crazy to think how young Cooper is, how, young he might still be in this really in 2 decades from now. Not 20 years, but not just in the 2030s, in the 2040s. He's still going to be in his early 30s. So there's a long way to go with Cooper Flagg. And if he keeps on this trajectory, like he's going to be one of the best players in the game within the next few years. He's going to be one of the best players of all time by 2040. So it's exciting to think about. And, there's nothing guaranteed after today's trade. Like, that's the thing. There's nothing guaranteed that they're going to be able to do this and that. But they got a real shot to do it now. And I think that's the main takeaway. They didn't have that before because they were like 2 million or 3 million below the second apron. Now they're 22 million under the second apron. They can do a lot more with that flexibility. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, obviously, look, the trade deadline is tomorrow at 2 p.m. Central. There's obviously a chance for the Mavericks to do something more. But if they don't, I think they accomplished a very major goal of this deadline. They got a head start on their summer work, and there's obviously a lot more work to do. But, they got a great head start on it. So they don't have to do anything now to save money because they made that move with this Anthony Dvais trade. So hopefully whatever they do from here on out actually helps them get better or build a more balanced roster. That's my closing takeaway of today. Vinay, you have anything else? And then after you, Fazil.
Not really. Like I said, I'm not thrilled. I'm happy that Finley and Riccardi got this done. It's a miracle to me that they got it done. But at the end of the day, like, it's hard to get just like super excited in the sense of like, I'm not trying to think about the Luka trade, but it's also like this was the main piece of that trade. And, at the end of the day, whatever was going to happen with AD, this is still like I guess, a underwhelming return. Like, if they did it in the summer, maybe they could have gotten a KD trade. That's the part that sucks because as soon as they won the lottery with Coop, they probably should have made that move into that timeline instead of the 2 timeline gimmick. But nonetheless, it's a good day, I would say. Whatever they do with the pick, I think is going to be the most important thing coming out of the trade, along with the financial flexibility that we've harped on this entire podcast. And I think it's exciting from the sense that, Cooper's going to be a type of player that players are going to want to play with from around the league. He's already a national story. Like, these last 3 games especially, like, I mean, even before he played for the Mavericks, he was like in the national spotlight. Think about the whole Team USA stuff, and like, he's just a guy that's been relevant for a while already. And we're beyond lucky to have gotten that 1.8% chance of getting him. We've talked about, like, if we didn't get him and this whole trade happened like it did, then we would be beyond effed. So thank God that we have Cooper Flagg. That's all I can say.
Yeah. Thank God we have Cooper Flagg because, again, this deal would look like a million times worse, and I'm not even exaggerating, a million times worse. But I don't think they would have done this deal. Exactly. Yeah.
They probably wouldn't have done it without Cooper. Like, they probably would have like tried to bring everyone back healthy and, make a push for the playoffs this year. So
yeah,
we don't live in that world though, thankfully.
Thankfully. Fazil, any concluding thoughts before we get out of here?
I mean, yeah, not anything super in depth, but just you talk about having a floor spacing 5, being able to play 5 out. We saw how well that worked when we had Luka. We had in 2020 the greatest offensive rating of all time in league history up to that point. We went away from that, and it didn't turn out so well in 2023. In 2024, moves were made that made the team overall pretty good, if not great at everything. So the lack of shooting didn't really bother us. And now we're kind of like up the creek without a paddle because we don't have shooting, we don't have dribbling, and we don't have nearly the same level of competence in other areas of the game on the roster. So you can see how well that was going up until this point right now. So I do think, if you surround Cooper with shooters, if you're able to play 5 out with him, it is going to be amazing. Like, we haven't really scratched the surface of what he is capable of. And I'm super excited for that. I hope, the team building philosophy manages to get that done sooner rather than later. If we can get a glimpse of that this season, that would be awesome. But, hopefully by this time next year, we're going to be talking about the Mavs' incredible offense. But yeah, that's really all I've got. So I think there's definitely a path for this team to be good. Maybe not with all the same guys, but as long as you have Cooper, you got a chance. And I didn't think I'd be saying that about a Mavs player. It's so soon.
Well said. As long as you have Cooper, you have a chance. And I think the Mavericks realized that. They made this deal. This deal would not have happened unless Cooper Flag was on the roster. So thank God for him. The Mavericks have freed themselves from the Anthony Davis era, and I've been very hard on AD, but the reality of this situation
Really?
was, I have been very hard on him. It's not their problem anymore. Thankfully not. They don't have to worry about the contract. They don't have to worry about, how soon is he going to get hurt when he comes back. It's over now. It should have never happened, but Cooper Flag really reset the timeline from them. And, we just move forward from there. So, look, it was a good day for the Mavericks. It's been a good week for them, seeing Cooper Flag develop into this superstar. And we'll see what the next, less than 24 hours bring in terms of more trades for the Mavericks. But Vinay, Fazal, thanks for joining me on this. Shout out to Rohan as well. Thanks for interacting with all our listeners in the chat. Rohan's in Japan, but, the chat's very important, so appreciate everyone who was in the chat and messaging us during the stream. Thanks for everyone who tuned in. We had a pretty good crowd today, and so
Were there any mean comments in the chat?
No, I think everyone was being pretty supportive. So
sometimes our Twitter replies get mean.
Oh, they get very mean, but you know what? YouTube has been a lot more kind to us, so I really do appreciate the people who not only tuned in today, but who have been tuning in, for the last few streams, because this whole live stream thing has been a new addition, a new innovation of Mavs Film Room, let's say. So I think things have been going great, but it wouldn't have been possible without everyone who tuned in. So thanks again. We'll be back possibly tomorrow if the Mavericks make more trades. Otherwise, next week we'll talk about what this team looks like with Demon Malakai Branham and Marvin Bagley manning the fort for them. So
you must have hit the over for Malakai Branham mentioned in a podcast like of all time.
I mean, I haven't even
mentioned. Find out that Rohan placed the fucking bet on Kalshi on Jay's over under.
If anyone had that as a bet, they should be arrested. But thankfully, I'm not that important. But AJ Johnson's going to catch some strays as well. So, I saw someone tweet that he's only 160 pounds, which is crazy to me.
Let me introduce you to Tex-Mex and Texas barbecue, buddy.
Yeah, he'll put on weight in no time. But guys, thanks again. A lot more to talk about. We'll see what they can do tomorrow. So take care, go Mavs, and we'll see y'all soon.